So this goes all the way back to when I was raised. I was raised in a spiritual house. We was in church, Baptist faith. Grandpa was a United Baptist preacher on my mom's side. Strong in the faith. My grandma was strong in the faith. Mom and dad was strong in the faith. I went to the altar at a young age. I was around the 8-9-year-old time frame, and I think it was more out of fear than it was the love of God as a child, because back in them days, the preachers that we listened to was pretty hellfire and brimstone, and it it would scare kids, but needless to say, it got me to the altar, because whether it was fear or whether it was love, it was, I don't want to go to hell, and I want to live forever with Jesus. And so I was saved, and I was baptized at a young age. And I truly believe that. I am a firm believer in once saved, always saved. But then the family unit, without going into a big ordeal with that, the family unit, mom and dad divorced. What happened to me, I'm not saying that caused me to do what I done, but it had a bearing, because I didn't have the family unit. I didn't have the father and the mother there to correct me, to show me. I stayed with my mom. She done the best she could, and done quite a job, may I add. But as I got into my teen years, and this is back I'm a child of the 60s and 70s, so as I got into my teen years in the 70s, I went down a different road than the church. I went down the road of drugs, sex, a little bit of alcohol. It was involved, not a lot, but a little bit. But it was a party lifestyle. Now, I was raised with a work ethic. I went to work when I was 7 years old mowing lawns by myself. I would drive a lawnmower with a little cart behind it, a riding lawnmower with a little cart behind it with my push mower, and I would go into town and I would mow yards for people. And that was my money. I learned a work ethic at a young age. And so when I went down this road of the drugs and that lifestyle, I wasn't mean and trying to. I mean, I didn't steal. I respected people, but I just partied, and it was myself, So I went down that road for my whole teen years. I'd say I probably was in maybe church, your holidays with the family, Christmas, Thanksgiving, whatever, Easter, but the rest of the time I wasn't in church. I knew God. I knew who he was, and I knew he was there. And I believed. I did. I do believe that, but I was on this road that it was taking, it was myself. I wanted to party, I wanted to do whatever I wanted to do. And so as I got into my 20s, and there was a lot of times in my partying life that, there was times I would be so messed up that I just pull off the side of the road somewhere and sleep. I couldn't drive, and it was just that lifestyle. Where am I going to sleep at tonight? Sometimes it was just in my car because I didn't have a place to go. Sometimes it was this buddy giving me a place to crash, or maybe it was staying with this woman or staying here, or what. It was just that type of lifestyle. But I always, as a young kid, I hunted and I fished, and that was something that I enjoyed. Raised in a small town, 100 miles west of here, and there was nothing to do. Maybe that's the reason why some of us went down that road of drugs and that. But I like to hunt and fish. That was a passion. So when I done the hunting and the drugs and that, I would hunt and fish some, but I wasn't as much, I messed with dogs a lot, always hunted with dogs. I've always had a dog in my life. So anyway, when I was 23, well, actually 22, and I'm working at a grocery store, and this girl come up to me, and I knew her dad through hunting and fishing. But she's a young girl, high school age. She was actually a senior in high school. And I knew, I just knew who she was. I didn't really know her. But she come up to me in the grocery store and said hi to me and kind of smiled, well, what 21, 22-year-old guy wouldn't say hi, and smile. And so we talked a little bit. Well, then I asked her out one day. And so I asked her out, and she's like, well, okay. So I took her on a date. And we go out, and it was a kind of an eye-opener, because here I am, a partier. And, well, the first thing I done was I took her to a place and we were going to party. Oh, it put her in tears. And I'm like, she don't like this. And I respected her. And okay, we'll leave this. And so we went out and we left the party, and she's like, I don't do that. That's not me. I'm like, okay, I can respect that. And we talked, and had a pretty good date. So then I call her, it was I don't know, maybe a week or so later, years has went by. I call her up on the phone. And I said, hey, I knew she loved to fish, and she liked to hunt. And I called her up and I said, hey, you want to go dig some worms with me and we'll go fishing? And she's like, yeah. She's like, let's go do it. And we did. We went, we dug worms, night crawlers in the St. Francis River bottoms. And man, she's picking them worms up as quick as I could dig them up. And we went fishing, we caught fish. And we had a good time. Well, but she didn't party. And, it wasn't something that I thought I was looking for, or I was trying to get, it was just a date. And we go out. After we dated about a year and a half, I just seen something that, we had a great relationship, and the family, all a hunting and fishing type family that she come out of, and there's some big stories about that can just go on and on, but I fell in love with this gal, so I asked her to marry me, and she did. So there we are, struggling to make ends meet, and just poor. Poor. I didn't come from a poor background, but when I got out into the working world, and it was just me and her, we found out, or I found out, she was from a less fortunate family, but I found out just how poor people can be. But I look back at it. We was happy, but she wanted to have children, and so I did too. And I'm like, well, if we're going to have children, this was my mindset. If we're going to have children, I said, you need to go to college. I had a 12th grade education. I come out from underneath a rock, and I hit the working world at 7 years old, and never looked back. Education wasn't for me. But I said, you need to get an education. And that way, if something happens to me, you have something to fall back on if you want to have children. And I want to have children too. So we scraped and done everything we could, and managed to get her through a 4-year college degree here at Southeast Missouri State in Cape. And she got a job with social worker with the state of Missouri. And so, okay, and it's like, well, let's have a baby. So in June 27th, 1993, my daughter was born. And 3 months after it was a hard labor, and she was a forceps baby. The doctor literally had to pull her, or literally did pull her, and so she had a little bit of trouble in the first day or two of her of being in the world. But anyway, we got sent home with what we thought was a perfectly normal child. And along about the third month, she was about 3 months old. She had what we knew for sure was a seizure. And so off to the doctors we go. Well, we end up in St. Louis Children's Hospital, and they've got her hooked up to all kinds of monitors on her head and that, and doing EEGs and this and that. And so they tell us, well, your daughter was injured during birth, is what we think. And they said, there was a little bit, maybe a stroke or something, but she was injured during birth, and she's having seizures. And then the doctor said she's got a slight case of cerebral palsy, which, of course, is a birth injury, too. And so, okay, and here comes the medicines. They put her on medicines. So, can't get the seizures controlled. She just keeps having seizures. So then her development, she wasn't hitting her milestones of her development. She was having seizures. We did, and she was 3 years old. The schools do your therapy for your children. It's up to them to provide it. Until then, we was driving over here to Cape Girardeau for therapy. So when it come to that, the school that we was attending, hey, okay, we're going to provide this therapy, but guess what? It was therapy for adults. That's the therapist. It wasn't pediatric therapist. All the school's required to do is provide you with therapy, and they did. So, okay. So I knew I had to do something. And so I quit my job, and I was working in Poplar Bluff, and I quit my job. And when I told the boss down there I was quitting the job, the HR manager, he's like, "You got a job somewhere?" I said, "No." "Well, you didn't quitting your job?" And I said, "Well," I said, I'm moving my family to Cape Girardeau area and getting to Jackson School. Because I said they'll spend money on therapies for my child. I said, I'm going over there for children. "Well, you need to wait till you get a job." I said, "I'm working 6 days a week here and traveling 104 miles, round trip to back and forth to work." And I said, when am I going to look for a job over there? I said, "No, I said, God will provide." And hence there comes God into the picture, because I knew, that, something would give. So I quit my job on first week of January, and I get a job at a place down here by Scott City at making more money than I was making at my previous job. I get a job down there the first week of February. I was out of work for a month. But I got a job. So we get the family moved over, but by the end of the year, I get a job at the best place in the area for jobs out here at Procter & Gamble. And made, it provided for money for what I needed for my daughter, insurance and everything. I look back at that now, and God was there. He helped me. I could have worked anywhere over here, but that was the place that I got to work, at one of the most premier places to work, if you want to say that, for factory. Glorified shoe factory is what I always called it. Anyway, it provided for Stephanie and a job for us. But my wife, Stephanie just kept having seizures. And so she got up to 6 years old, 7 years old, and it's just constantly seizures. I mean, like, it was nothing for her to have over 100 seizures in a month, and that would be every month. There might be a few months thrown in there every now and then that she might have 50, but it was just her life. It was seizures. They wasn't always terrible seizures, but they were seizures. And we went to church, we prayed, we done a lot of things with Stephanie. I've had people pray over at the house, but it was still the same old road, seizures and seizures. Well, then I thought about 2006, I guess it was 2005, 2006. I told my wife, I said, I'm gonna get Stephanie a dog. And because I love dogs, she loved dogs. I've got hunting dogs and beagles. That's kind of what I always would resort to for my escape of the troubles that we went through with it, and that was my relaxed time. So I said, I'm gonna get her a dog. So we went up and we got her I said, I'm gonna get her a Weimaraner. So we go to these people's house in St. Louis that was advertising puppies. And I said, I want to take my daughter in to meet these puppies if you don't mind. She said, absolutely. We took her in the backyard, walked her back there, set her down in the chair, and all these puppies playing around. Of course, I wanted a male dog. All these puppies playing around. And I'd get a dog and I'd take it to her. And the dogs would run off and she'd watch them, And I'm like, man, what puppy? Well, we'd been there half an hour. And then I looked down and I realized there's a puppy laying at her feet. And she has been chewing on, Stephanie had to wear braces to walk. And this puppy was chewing on her brace. And had been there the whole time. But I wasn't seeing that. I was just, here, look at this puppy. And finally I said, I don't know if this is it. Well, that's a female. But I said, I guess Stephanie's going to get a female. Because I said, I believe that puppy has picked Stephanie. And that's what happened. So, and people ask, well, why you talk about a dog in the life? Well, because this dog, Ziva, she comes into our life, and she is such a blessing to us and to Stephanie, because Stephanie just loved to play with her, and she loved to play with Stephanie. And the therapist, when they would come out to the house and they would work with Stephanie about, her occupational skills or her physical therapy or whatever it may be, when Stephanie would get tired and get a little agitated about, I've had enough of this, Stephanie she never could talk. But she could make her point, with her expressions and this and that, this is enough. But that dog, when Stephanie had enough of that, of it, she didn't even have to say anything. Stephanie didn't even have to do anything. Ziva would get up, never would do anything to harm anybody. But Ziva would get up, and she'd walk over, and she would get between the therapist and Stephanie. And just as she'd do that, then Stephanie would give a cue of, I've had enough of this. And the therapist knew that. She's like, the dog knows more than us. So with that said, Ziva, our dog, she was a godsend. She, all the way down to the dog, God put that in our life. So Ziva's still with us today. She's getting ready to celebrate her 16th birthday. bless her heart, she's getting old. But God knew that dog was going to help us down the road. So all this happened, and with Ziva getting a new dog and that, well, then the summer of 2006, the spring of 2006, we just hadn't had Ziva that long, just a little while. Stephanie started having a seizure. She went into seizing on a Friday, and so there was medicine that we give her when she'd have these clusters of seizures, and they would be prolonged. There was medicine that the doctors would give us, that we could give her that would always kind of bring her out of it. But you couldn't keep them on it all the time. Well, we give it to her. Nothing happened. She just kept having seizures. So we end up in Children's Hospital. Well, Monday, the neurologist come in and said, and there was medicine that they was wanting to put her on that I was scared to put her on it because it was nasty, nasty medicine. And the doctor come in and he said, Mark, he sat down with me and he said, we've got to stop these seizures. And he said, this is bad, and this is time to think about these drugs. I said, do what you got to do, doctor. So they had to put her on a respirator. They had to intubate her, put her on a respirator, and they give her medicine to stop these seizures that basically the life support kept her alive. And they just flooded her with this medicine to stop these seizures. And they stopped. But we was in intensive care for it was a month or however long. But she got the life support taken off. We was on strong medications, but so when she done that, she lost the mobility to walk. She was in the wheelchair then, and she needed a lot of therapy. So we went from a special needs child to even more special needs child. And so in the next year, Stephanie went through it's countless hospital stays. We stayed at the hospital more than we stayed at home, and we've done a lot of hospital stays over the years with her. But she developed this seizure. She had developed into a syndrome called Lennox-Gastaut. And Lennox-Gastaut is the nastiest epileptic syndrome that you can have. And there's a lot of things to it that it usually don't hit females. It's usually always found in males. And it's not, a lot of children don't get it. It's usually a little older, and it just, but Stephanie had it, Lennox-Gastaut. And the neurologist said, this will get worse. So, but in the next year, she had kidney stones, of which we give her, they give her at local hospital, they give her morphine to help with the pain. She was allergic to morphine. We ended up in Children's Hospital for that because She was a case that needed to be in the hospital at Children's for the medicine that they're going to give her and pass these kidney stones. And that happened. Then she had what they call C. diff in the hospital for that. Then she had MRSA. She got MRSA while she was in the hospital, which is like a staph infection in your blood. She had that. Then she had Stevens-Johnson syndrome, which they already had a lot of doctors coming into Children's Hospital studying Stephanie because of the Lennox-Gastaut. But when she got the Stevens-Johnson syndrome, a lot of the doctors up there didn't even know what, and when she was diagnosed with it, they were on some really, I don't know, lack of better words, high-powered doctors into, and a lot of students, this is Stevens-Johnson syndrome. She got over that. She got over all of that. She didn't get over the seizures. And there was other stuff. She had feeding tube. We had troubles with feeding tubes. Anyway, before Thanksgiving of 2007, the week before, she was eating. We had to feed her. We fed her all of her life, hand feed her. She was a total take care of. My wife stayed home and took care of her. Hence the reason why I think I got the job that I got. So she aspirated. She threw up and she aspirated some stuff in her lungs. To the hospital we go. And so while we're in the hospital and they're literally cleaning her lungs out because she got like a pneumonia in her lungs, we're up there, and when they actually, because she was really hurting down here at the local hospital in the emergency room, her O2 sats was crazy, and it's like, and I said, get her to Children's. So one of the many times that she was air evac'd, a helicopter come down, picked her up, took her to Children's. And so I'm like, what next? And so I go home and grabbing a few things, live up here at Fruitland. I grab a few things for me and the wife to meet, be up at the hospital. And I sat down, I knelt at Stephanie's grave, or Stephanie's bed. And I said, look, God, whatever you're doing, I've asked for strength through all of this. That's what I prayed to you the most for, is strength, and help me get through this, and help Stephanie and heal Stephanie. We've prayed for healing, but we've prayed for strength. And I'm like, God, I don't know if we got more strength. And I said, but whatever you do, it's in your hands. So we get to the hospital, and she's, like I said, she had aspirated, and they're cleaning her lungs out, and they've got her on a BiPAP machine to help her breathe. Every day we'd clean her lungs out, take the BiPAP machine off. She was kind of in and out, still having seizures. And so we had to do they wanted to do an x-ray, and we took her down to do an x-ray. This was after about a week in there. We took her down to do an x-ray, and while we had her off of the BiPAP machine, her sats just bottomed out again. Well, that was happening every time. and when they do tests and what have you. And so the doctors, they called me and my wife in to a room and sat down with us. And so they're telling us, everything that we know. This one doctor, and I applaud her for what she said. Everything that we know about the brain, she said, it's 1,000 times fold of what we don't know. And she said, so Stephanie's lungs are clear. Her lungs are clear. But she's not breathing deep. And said that's why, she's not getting that transfer, oxygen O2 transfer. And so they talked to us about putting a trach in, putting her on life support. Well, she'd been on life support for a short time before. But one of our hospital stays years prior, we was with a mom, we was in a room with a mom and a child, that the child was on life support with a trach. That machine was breathing for her. And she'd been doing that for years. And her mom was trying to fix her. And me and my wife seen that, and we lived with it for the 7-8 days that we was in the hospital with them. And I told my wife then, I said, I don't ever want to go to that with Stephanie. And my wife said, no, I don't either. So anyway, when the doctors said that to us, we both me and my wife taking care of Stephanie for the many years, and that we knew what each one was going to say, and we both at the same time looked at the doctor and said, no, we're not doing that. And the doctor said, well, okay, we'll keep her on this machine. So on December the 8th, in the wee hours of the morning in 2007, I looked at my wife and I said, how long are we going to let this go on? And she said, I don't know. And I said, I'm ready to take the BiPAP machine off of her. I said, and what happens, happens. Because, we can't keep this up. We can't do this. They're wanting to put the trach in, and we ain't going to let them do that. And so my wife says, okay. She said, let's take it off. So I crawled up in bed with Stephanie, and I took the mask off of her, put my arm around her like she always would lay with me. She'd always lay on my shoulder. And she looked at me, and she hadn't smiled at that smile since she'd been in the hospital that time. And she opened her eyes and looked at me, and she gave me the biggest smile. And it was like, it was like, oh, that's what I've been looking for from my little girl. And so I held her in my arms, and my wife next to us. And for anybody, and I prayed out to God. I said, God, if you're going to take her and take care of her, because we've done all we can do. And if nobody has ever experienced God and the Holy Spirit in their presence, That day and that time, that hour, I did. Because there was a presence in that room with me and my wife that if it wasn't there, I couldn't have done what I done. There's no way I could have done it. But I did. And Stephanie went to sleep. She's with God. And she's not having seizures anymore. And she's not suffering. Because if anybody suffered in this life, my little girl suffered. So when God took her home, it was like, okay, now God's taking care of her. So we got closer with the relationship with God after that. I mean, it's until you join a club when you lose a child, you join that unwanted club that nobody should have to join that. It's a terrible club to be in. But some of us are in it. But we attended church and we prayed. I pray every night, and so there's a passage in Matthew that Jesus said, and that was handed to me in a Christmas gift. And it was just a Christmas exchange type thing. You didn't know who was going to get what or whatever. Okay, there was a passage that Jesus said, bring your burdens to me, that my yoke is light. And so I read that whole passage. That verse was a card in that Christmas gift. It's hanging on our refrigerator to this day. And so, many nights that we lay and, miss Stephanie, and it's like, Lord, help us. And he has. That's where, and people say, well, what, when I was talking about Ziva, the dog. Well, Ziva's been with us. Still with us. And that was Stephanie's dog. And she comes up and gives us hugs. Ziva's went everywhere, and we've been in 5 or 6 different states with her, and she goes everywhere with us. Not anymore because she's too old, and we got to get her in and out of the truck. But God put her with us because he knew that we would get a smile on our face when Ziva would come and give us a hug, because that was Stephanie's dog, and Stephanie hugged Ziva. It's little things like that I think God helps you, and he for sure has helped us. So but we struggle. We struggle all the time. And it's been a struggle for 13 years. To get past losing a child. You take care of them for 14 years. They're with you in your heart forever. And that's what the difference in happiness and joy is joy is when you have them troubles, whatever that trouble is, God raised Jesus from the dead. And if you believe in him, you're with him. So, and then the treasures are, my treasures are not of this earth, but as of in heaven. Well, my treasures are in heaven. And that really resonated with me that, it's that's real joy, knowing that my daughter is in heaven with God. I just, it's just a joy for that. Did we go through a lot? Yeah, we went through a lot. So here I am. I walked through all these years I look back at all these years that, me and my wife getting married, she was a born again Christian. She didn't go down the road of drinking and partying and that. I marry her. I get away from it. God knew that I was going to have Stephanie. And I think he knew my wife was going to have Stephanie. And she was going to be a special needs child. Well, he knew my heart that I was going to do what was right by that child. And that I would lean on him. And I did. And he knew that my wife would follow me. And she did. And still does. And because we're a family unit. We're going to celebrate 35 years of marriage the 27th of this month, December. And you just, I don't know what I'd do without her, But God knew I needed to come into this church and listen to Pastor Chris, that sermon. Why he was, how I can't say that I knew that he was pushing me to this church, but I look back at it now and I knew what he was doing, because when I got in here and I listened to it and then I seen, here's my stuff coming up and I started drinking again. I got cirrhosis of the liver and I drink a beer. It's like, what are you doing? So I decided to be baptized into the church as I'm committing my life. I'm resurrendering. I'm saying, Lord, I know what you're doing, and I'm going to follow it. And here is a public statement, and hence this testimony. Because like I say, this is a lifetime, and this is 13 years of coming, of me sitting down, because I knew I had that. Pastor Jonathan preached that one Sunday about your story. That was like, wow. And you preached about take a stand. That's the only time I've heard you preach. And Pastor Darren, and that resonated with me. The series of the gathering that Pastor Chris done was like, yeah, you gotta be a part of a church. You gotta be a part of the gathering. And now this last Sunday when he preached the Christmas and all of the stuff that Mary went through, and what God does in our lives. And I look back, I mean, it has all prepared me to sit down here in this chair and give that testimony that it's a rough life, and you will see some awful things in this world. And to find happiness, you can find happiness in a lot of things. And I've looked for happiness in many different things. You won't find it with drugs, and you won't find it in a bottle. And you'll find happiness in things, but to find true joy, and that scripture of 1 Peter, that's true joy, and that's what I found by following God through these tests and these trials and all the stuff that me and my wife has been through, and myself has been through before I met my wife. He's just put stuff there for me to bring me back to the right spot. And I think he done that with this church. He's like, well, you got to come back to the right spot. So that's really why I told my wife, I said, I'm gonna baptize into that church, because I'm going to show, I'm going to surrender again, even though I fully believe I'm saved, but I'm going to surrender again, telling God, do with me what you want to do, and what my path is ahead of me.